stranded among stars. The moment Dominic Hayes's freighter started spinning through the asteroid field like a deranged gyroscope, he knew his delivery deadline wasn't just in jeopardy, it was as dead as his ship's engines. Warning lights bathed the cockpit in angry red as the automated systems frantically tried to compensate for the cascading failures. "Come on, girl," he muttered, fingers dancing across the manual controls. "Don't quit on me now." But the Callisto's pride had different plans. Something had shredded the port thrusters, probably one of those micrometeors that the scanner had missed, and now his once reliable vessel was careening toward the surface of an uncharted moon orbiting a gas giant in this forgotten corner of the Epsilon sector. Impact wasn't so much a landing as a prolonged argument between ship and ground, with the ground making its position crystal clear. Metal screamed, systems failed, and Dominic's world became a blur of motion and pain before darkness claimed him. When consciousness returned, it arrived with the steady drip of something hitting his face. Dominic blinked, expecting to see the cracked ceiling of his ship. Instead, he found himself staring into a pair of eyes, amber with vertical pupils that reflected light in ways human eyes never could. They belonged to a face that was almost human but unmistakably alien, high cheekbones, silvery blue skin with faint luminescent patterns, and a delicate crown of short, sensitive tendrils where hair would be on a human head. "You should be dead," the alien said in accented but perfect English, her voice like wind chimes with an undercurrent of static. Dominic tried to sit up, immediately regretted it as pain lanced through his chest, and settled for turning his head instead. He was in a small dome-shaped dwelling, constructed from materials that looked like a hybrid of grown crystal and fabricated metal. "Where?" "My research outpost," she replied, applying something cool to his forehead. "I pulled you from your ship before the fuel cells destabilized. You humans build such fragile vessels." "Thanks for the rescue," Dominic managed. "And the engineering critique." The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh. "I am Nyara, xenobiologist of the Litharian Science Collective. You are approximately 42 light-years from the nearest human outpost, on a moon your species hasn't even named yet." "Perfect." Dominic Hayes, veteran pilot, divorced father of two, and now, officially the most isolated human in this sector of space. "Dominic," he offered. "Cargo pilot. Currently unemployed, I'm guessing, since my ship is toast." "Your vessel is indeed toast," Nyara said, testing the idiom carefully. "But the emergency beacon activated. Someone will come. Eventually." Eventually could mean weeks or months out here in the border regions. Not ideal for a man with child support payments and a shipment of medical supplies that were now scattered across the moon's surface. Over the next few days, as Dominic recovered from 3 broken ribs and a concussion, he learned that Nyara had been stationed on this desolate rock for nearly an Earth year. She was studying the unique electromagnetic field patterns that emanated from deep within the moon's core, patterns that shouldn't exist naturally. "This place sings," she explained one evening as they sat outside her habitat, watching the gas giant rise on the horizon, painting the sky in swirls of amber and deep blue. "Not with sound, but with energy. Patterns too regular to be natural." Dominic sipped the bitter herbal tea she had prepared. It tasted terrible but helped with the pain. "You think someone built something down there? An artificial core?" "Perhaps," she said, her tendrils rippling in what he'd come to recognize as excitement. "Or perhaps something older. Something that has become part of this moon. I've been taking readings, but the source is deep. Too deep for my equipment to reach." As Dominic's strength returned, he began helping Nyara with her research. His technical knowledge wasn't on her level, her species had been traveling between stars when humans were still figuring out agriculture, but he had a practical engineer's mind that complemented her theoretical approach. Together they modified her scanning equipment using salvaged parts from the Callisto's Pride. It was during one of these salvage missions that Dominic noticed something odd about the crash site. "Nyara," he called, pointing at the impact furrow his ship had carved into the rocky ground. "These readings don't make sense." She glided over, moving with that strange fluid grace her species possessed. What is it? The radiation pattern. He waved the scanner. It's different from yesterday. It's shifting. Her tendrils stood straight up, alarm. We need to leave. Now. They barely made it 50 meters before the ground beneath the ship collapsed inward, revealing a perfect circular shaft descending into darkness. Not a natural formation, the edges were too clean, too precise. Well, Dominic said after a moment, I think we found your signal source. The discovery changed everything. What had been a relatively simple matter of waiting for rescue became a scientific gold mine. Nyara's tendrils rarely stopped their excited movement as they set up more advanced monitoring equipment around the shaft opening. This technology is ancient, she said, studying the readings. Possibly predating both our civilizations. You think it's dangerous? Dominic asked, eyeing the perfect darkness of the shaft with unease. All unknown technology presents risk, she replied pragmatically. But knowledge is worth the danger. That night, as they huddled in her habitat while a radiation storm howled outside, common on this moon, he'd learned, Dominic realized something had shifted between them. Isolation did strange things to people, created connections that might never form in normal circumstances. And despite their biological differences, despite the fact that they came from worlds circling different suns, he found himself drawn to Nyara's brilliance, her calm focus, her strange alien beauty. Tell me about your world, he asked as the storm raged. She hesitated, then began speaking in that melodic voice. Tales of crystal cities suspended in gas-giant atmospheres, of the great scientific collective that had guided her people for millennia, of stars mapped and wonders discovered. And yet, she finished softly, we've never found anything like what lies beneath us here. On the 10th day after his crash, Dominic's emergency beacon received a response, a human vessel, approximately 2 weeks away. Around the same time, Nyara's communication array detected a Letharian research ship approaching, drawn by her regular data transmissions. Your timing is excellent, she said, but her tendrils drooped slightly. That evening, as they prepared to descend into the shaft, Nyara had finally calibrated her equipment to shield against the strange radiation. Dominic caught her watching him with an unreadable expression. What? He asked. My superiors will quarantine this moon, she said quietly. No external contact will be permitted once they understand what we've found. And my rescue ship? They will be warned away. For security reasons. Dominic fell silent. 2 weeks ago, nothing would have mattered more than getting off this rock. Now. Is that necessary? He finally asked. Couldn't our people study this together? Her tendrils twisted in a pattern he hadn't seen before. The collective doesn't collaborate on discoveries of this magnitude. And your military would do the same, given the chance. As they descended into the shaft, lights mounted on their protective suits illuminating ancient symbols etched into the perfectly smooth walls, Dominic felt a profound sense of being caught between worlds. Here he was, possibly the first human to see technology created by a civilization older than recorded history, and soon he might be forced to leave it all behind, including Nyara. The shaft opened into a vast chamber, and Dominic's breath caught in his throat. At the center stood a pillar of shifting light, colors flowing like liquid through translucent material that hummed with power. Around it, arranged in concentric circles, were what appeared to be control stations, their surfaces responding to proximity by illuminating with symbols neither human nor Letharian. It's beautiful, Nyara whispered, her scientific detachment momentarily forgotten. Before Dominic could respond, a proximity alert chimed from both their communication devices. Ships entering orbit, plural. And not just the expected vessels. Nyara's eyes widened as she read the data. Military ships, she said, her voice tight. Both human and Letharian. Armed. The perfect moment of discovery shattered around them as the first distant rumbles of orbital weapons fire echoed through the moon's thin atmosphere. We have to get back to the surface, Dominic said urgently. Now. As they raced back up the shaft, Nyara suddenly gripped his arm, her eyes wild with an emotion he couldn't name. "Dominic," she said, her voice breaking on his name, "they cannot have this place. Either of our kinds. Not yet. We're not ready." And in that moment, as the ancient chamber hummed beneath them and forces gathered above, Dominic realized their discovery had just placed them at the center of what could become the first interspecies conflict in this sector of space, with only the two of them standing between two civilizations and a power neither understood. "Then we better figure something out fast," he said grimly, taking her hand as they climbed toward an uncertain future. Whispers of the void. The ascent felt endless. Each rung of the ancient ladder burned against Dominic's palms as another distant boom shook dust from the shaft walls. The perfect symmetry of the tunnel, unsettling in its mathematical precision, seemed to mock their frantic climb. "What exactly are we running toward?" Dominic gasped, pausing to catch his breath. Above them, the circular opening to the surface appeared as a pale blue disk against the darkness. Nyara didn't slow her ascent. "The transmission array at my outpost. If I can broadcast what we found with an open frequency, both sides will know the other has the same information," Dominic finished, understanding flickering across his face. "Mutually assured scientific discovery." "Precisely." Her tendrils rippled with grim determination. They reached the surface to find the sky fractured by weapon trails, luminous arcs that cut through the moon's thin atmosphere. The gas giant hung massive on the horizon, its swirling surface a backdrop to what looked like the opening moves of a war. "This is madness," Dominic muttered as they sprinted toward the habitat. "They're fighting over something they don't even understand." "Resource conflicts are universal," Nyara replied, her breathing controlled despite their pace. "Both our species evolved as territorial predators." The habitat came into view, the crystalline dome now reflecting flashes from the battle above. Inside, Nyara moved with practiced efficiency, activating systems Dominic hadn't known existed. Panels shifted, revealing a sophisticated communications array far beyond the simple research equipment he'd assumed she possessed. "You're not just a xenobiologist, are you?" he asked, watching her hands fly across the controls. She paused, her amber eyes meeting his. "I am many things, Dominic Hayes. As are you." Before he could press further, the ground beneath them trembled. Not the distant vibration of orbital weapons, but something closer, something beneath them. "The chamber is responding to the conflict," Nyara said, her voice tight with urgency. "The ancient systems are defensive. We have minutes, perhaps less." Working together, they calibrated the array to broadcast all their research data, the shaft's dimensions, the chamber's energy readings, the strange symbols neither could decipher. As Nyara prepared the transmission, Dominic kept watch through the habitat's viewport, tracking the battle above. "Two human destroyers, for smaller craft," he reported, military training from his youth surfacing automatically. "And what look like 3 Letharian vessels, design configurations I've never seen before. Void Sentinels," Nyara said without looking up. "Built for scientific protection and data acquisition. That's a fancy name for gunships." Her tendrils twisted in what might have been annoyance or amusement. "Your species has such limited terminology." The transmission was nearly ready when the habitat sensors screamed in warning. Multiple ships breaking atmosphere, descent vectors calculated for precision landings. Both human and Letharian forces, converging on their location. "They tracked our signals," Dominic realized. "Both sides." Nyara nodded, making final adjustments. "The broadcast is ready. Once sent, it cannot be rescinded." Dominic moved to her side, placing his hand over hers on the activation control. "Together, then." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a connection forged in isolation and discovery. Together, they pressed the control. The transmission burst outward, a digital flare visible on Nyara's monitors as it reached the competing fleets. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the weapons fire ceased. The ships maintained their positions, but the immediate threat of escalation seemed to waver. "They're processing the data," Nyara said, tendrils rippling with cautious hope. Their respite was short-lived. The ground beneath the habitat shuddered violently, and instruments across the control panel flashed warnings. Outside, the perfect circle of the shaft began to emit a soft blue glow. "Something's happening," Dominic said, moving toward the viewport. The shaft's glow intensified, and from its depths rose a column of light, the same shifting colors they'd witnessed in the chamber below, but magnified 100-fold. It shot skyward, parting the thin clouds, reaching toward the assembled ships like a beckoning finger. Then came the voice, not heard through ears, but felt in the mind. A pressure of concepts and images too complex for language, filtering through their consciousness like light through water. Dominic gasped, clutching his head. Beside him, Nyara made a keening sound, her tendrils rigid with shock. "Observers. Witnesses. You stand at threshold." The words weren't English or Letharian, yet somehow Dominic understood them. By Nyara's expression, she did too. Conflict draws attention. Attention precedes judgment. Images flooded Dominic's mind, stars being born and dying, civilizations rising across galaxies, strange architectures of thought and matter intertwining across vast distances. And beneath it all, a sense of patient observation, ancient beyond comprehension. The presence receded slightly, becoming more focused. Two different kinds. Together. "This is unexpected." Nyara managed to speak, her voice strained. "We discovered your technology by accident. We meant no intrusion. No intrusion. Invitation. Test. Always test." Dominic struggled to form thoughts through the overwhelming mental pressure. Test for what? Readiness. Compatibility. The next step. Understanding dawned in Nyara's eyes. The chamber, it's a node in a network. A gateway. Correct. One of many. Placed when your kinds were young. Waiting for growth. The ground shook again, more violently. Outside, landing craft from both fleets touched down in a defensive perimeter around the habitat. Armed figures, human and Letharian, began to emerge. Choice approaches. War or understanding? You must decide. The presence began to fade, the pressure in their minds easing. The column of light remained, pulsing gently, illuminating the armed forces surrounding them in its ethereal glow. "We need to go out there," Dominic said, taking in the standoff developing around the habitat. "Before someone does something stupid." Nyara's hand found his, her cool fingers intertwining with his warm ones. "They will separate us. Question us. Classify this discovery according to their limited perspectives. Then we make them see beyond those perspectives." They stepped outside together, into the blue light, hands still joined. The gesture was not lost on either contingent of armed forces. A human officer stepped forward, Captain Vaughn of Earth Fleet Security, her uniform pristine despite the dust-laden atmosphere. From the Letharian side came a tall figure whose tendrils were braided with metallic thread signifying authority, Observer Thelios, his stance rigid with protocol. "Pilot Hayes," Vaughn acknowledged, her eyes flicking to his hand joined with Nyara's. "You're in violation of multiple regulations. Step away from the alien and prepare for extraction." Before Dominic could respond, Observer Thelios spoke, his harmonics pitched for command. "Researcher Nyara, you have exceeded your mandate. The collective requires your immediate return and full data transfer." Nyara's grip tightened on Dominic's hand. "What we've discovered here transcends our separate authorities," she said, addressing both commanders. "This technology predates both our civilizations. It's been waiting for us, testing whether we would approach it together or in conflict." "Cooperate?" Captain Vaughn scoffed. "With unvetted alien entities? Earth Fleet doesn't share discoveries of this magnitude. Nor does the collective," Observer Thelios added, his tendrils rigid with disapproval. Then you both fail the test, Dominic said flatly. Above them, the column of light pulsed, as if in agreement. This isn't just some ancient artifact. It's a node in a network spanning galaxies, built by a civilization advanced enough to observe the evolution of intelligent life. Our evolution. And now it's watching, Nyara continued, her voice gaining strength. Judging whether we're ready for what comes next. The column of light expanded suddenly, enveloping the habitat and the surrounding forces in a dome of translucent energy. Within it, all weapon systems went dead, confirmed by the surprised exclamations from both human and Letharian soldiers. Show them, came the whispered thought in both Dominic and Nyara's minds. Understanding what was needed, they stepped toward the shaft together. The blue glow intensified around them, lifting them gently into the air. Below, the chamber activated fully, its symbols now legible to all watching, a star map, with connections between systems that neither human nor Letharian ships had yet reached. The knowledge flowed through them, transmitted to all present, the network of gateways, placed by ancient beings who had evolved beyond physical form, waiting for new civilizations to mature enough for contact. Not one species alone, but different species working together, diversity being the crucial element the ancients sought in their successors. When the light receded, setting them gently back on the ground, the armed forces had lowered their weapons. Even Captain Vaughn and Observer Thelios stood in stunned silence. This changes everything, Vaughn finally said. As it should, Thelios agreed, his tendrils now moving in contemplative patterns. The following days brought chaos of a different sort. Ships from both species arrived to establish a joint research base. Diplomatic channels opened that had previously been deemed unnecessary for border regions. Dominic found himself acting as an unofficial liaison, his unique position as first human contact giving him unexpected authority. Nyara was reinstated as lead researcher, her excessive collaboration with Dominic now viewed as pioneering rather than protocol violation. But as the moon became crowded with scientists and military observers from both species, something inevitable approached. They stood at the edge of the shaft one evening, watching the teams of researchers preparing for another descent. The collective has requested my transfer to the central research vessel, Nyara said quietly. To coordinate the multi-site investigation. Other nodes have been identified in systems throughout this sector. Dominic nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Earth Fleet wants me back too. Apparently, my unique insights are valuable. He attempted a smile. Funny how crashing on a moon can advance your career. Dominic. Nyara turned to face him, her amber eyes reflecting the blue glow from the shaft. What we experienced here, what we discovered together, it matters beyond scientific breakthrough. I know. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing her tendrils in the gesture she had taught him meant deepest respect. Different kinds, together. That was the key all along. The gateway network wasn't built for one species to use. It was built to connect those who could learn to understand each other. Her hand rose to touch his face. Like us. The moment stretched between them, fragile and precious. They both knew what reality demanded, separate ships, separate responsibilities, separate worlds. But they also knew what the ancients had shown them, connections transcending differences were the future their species needed to embrace. This isn't an ending, Dominic said finally. It's just a different kind of exploration. Nyara's tendrils rippled with emotion. I will find you again, Dominic Hayes. Across whatever distance. As the twin suns set behind the gas giant, casting long shadows across the ancient shaft, they stood together at the threshold of something greater than either had imagined when fate had crashed them together on this forgotten moon, a future where boundaries between species became bridges instead. And somewhere in the vast network connecting the stars, ancient watchers observed with something like approval as the first tentative steps toward a new kind of understanding began.